1966, I was put on a project. I had been with IBM and now I was with General Electric. The project was to develop a little microcircuit that would connect the nerve ends on a broken spine back together. This seemed like a good idea to me, and it's something that I would want to be a part of. I was a very zealous engineer. I worked very hard. I worked many long hours. I was a design engineer and used Boolean algebra, Boolean equations to design computer circuits. We were not successful with the young lady with the severed spine. And as time went along, it looked like they were going to close our project down. We had learned many things, but she was not doing well. Much of our research data had been publicized, and some men came to us that we were to find out were from the government. They were from the CIA and the FBI. And they asked us to develop a little microchip for identification. This was to be used not in human beings, not in animals, but to be put in drug shipments to catch drug dealers. They came with a lot of money, and so we were willing to do whatever we could. I want to tell you at this point that I was not a Christian, and I did not want anything to do with Christians. We had developed the first identification device, and it was completed in the early 70s. They came back to us and they said, we want something better than that. And so we said, if you have enough money, we can develop anything. I was not alone there. There were 100 people involved in the project. Some were from General Electric, some from Motorola, some were from the Bell Laboratory, some were from the Boston Medical Center, and some were from Stanford University. My responsibility was project leader or the senior project engineer. We began to work on the design of a microchip that, when it was completed, was 0.75 millimeters in diameter, 7 millimeters long. It was the size of 1/4 of a grain of rice. Again, I want to say that I was not a Christian and there were no Christians there. They said they wanted this to have a power source and be able to emit a signal. And they told us they wanted us to use lithium as a battery source. Lithium's used in watch batteries, it's used in heart pacemaker batteries, it's used in a lot of places. I designed into this microchip a little charging circuit that would charge that battery. This sounds like a lot of technical things coming together, but if you'll bear with me 1 minute, you'll see what God has laid out about this microchip. When we discovered that we needed to be able to charge that battery, I needed a temperature change, a change in temperature to cause current to flow through that little charging circuit that would charge the battery. So we began to investigate and find out where in the body does the temperature change the most rapidly. We spent over $1 million in taxpayer money, and when the results came back, there was a lot of information. We divided it up amongst 3 teams and then came back together with that information. It was determined that there were 2 places in the body that were ideal for the microchip. One was just below the hairline on the forehead. Every mother checks their child's temperature right here. So we could have paid the mothers $1 million and saved I never saw a mother check their child's temperature on their ankle, always right here. The other place was the hand, the right hand preferred, because most people are right-handed. This didn't bother me, and it didn't bother anybody else on the team. The hand seemed a good place. Nobody wanted it here. And so the design work, everything was completed. The microchip was done. You're seeing it now on some of the Discovery Channel presentations. There are people who have received it already. It is real. It's not something that's coming way down the road. It says STIZO, i.e. to stick, to prick, a mark incised or punched into for recognition of ownership. I thought about the little injection tool. The end of it is called an incisor. I began to weep and I began to cry, and I said, "Oh God, what have we done?" I couldn't believe that this lined up with what we had developed. And I began to run from God. I didn't run away from the church, I ran into the church. I tried to do as many things as I could to atone for this. But I want to tell you something, as God is my witness here tonight, this got in the way. Money got in the way. I had beautiful homes overlooking the lake. I had all the things that I wanted. And I ran because of the money. My ability to go and get $250,000 in research money took me away from telling the message. I ran for many years. What I want to tell you is that this is real. The microchip implant is real. Credit cards are failing. They can be counterfeited. The new smart card can be counterfeited. They can be stolen. They can be lost. All kinds of things can happen to a card. But you cannot lose your hand. Very quickly, they're going to move to this being in the hand. And I tell you, as a Christian, you cannot take this. No matter what anybody says, God's word says you cannot take it. No matter what they try to talk you into, God's word says don't take it. In Revelation 14, verse 9, "And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If any man worship the beast in his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever, and they have no rest day nor night, who worship the beast in his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name." Today there have been over 15,000 babies that have been given the positive identification, the microchip. Many companies are using the microchip as identification in their top-level employees. The Immigration Naturalization Service has a better passport, the human hand. So many of these things are all around us. We talk about the signs of the New World Order. Last night I talked about my involvement in the development of a little microchip implant. And many people have already taken that microchip implant. The news media has talked about it being a good thing. And they will tell you that it's a good thing to have this. Your children won't ever get lost again. They won't be able to give you the wrong medication. They won't be able to, you won't be able to lose this thing. And so the plan is underway that you will receive it. I would be remiss if I came to you and didn't tell you that God's word says, don't you take it. No matter how nice they make it sound. I've been in 17 One World meetings. I was in Luxembourg with Henry Kissinger, George Shultz, and Bob Gates in a meeting. It was discussed there about the microchip. I was asked many questions, and I answered those questions. I've also asked God to forgive me for being in those meetings. They said, we'll make them aware of lost children. And so, after that meeting, on paper bags and milk cartons all over the United States, there were pictures of lost children. And then one day, all of those pictures disappeared. They aren't on the paper bags and milk cartons anymore because you had been conditioned. And now when you look at a paper bag or a milk carton, you think about lost children. We think like we are told to think. That's the reason why you have to have your mind renewed in Jesus Christ. I want to show you the microchip. This is a called a Destron IDI chip. This is about the size of a grain of rice. It has a little receiving antenna and a transmitting antenna. It has a microchip in the glass envelope. So this gives you a little look. We'll look at some more a little bit later. One of the things that we see, fiber optics, you see the orange bundles being put all around under the ground in most of the areas that we live in. The fiber optics allow fast transmissions of from our phone lines, but also it will open up our homes to the two-way communication for video communication, being able to see one another when we speak. Every time that you talk on the telephone, they are monitoring your phone conversation. Microchips are used to keep track of animals on military bases. Microchips also they talk about why carry cards when an implant will do the trick. This was in Computing Magazine. You can lose a credit card, it can be stolen, but you cannot lose your hand. And so the advantages to a microchip in the hand are very good for the world.